Today, we're diving into something pretty profound. It's what you could honestly call the final will and testament of the Apostle Simon Peter. Now, this isn't just some casual letter. This is an urgent, last-ditch message from a leader who knows, for a fact, that his time is running out. So let's get right into it. But first, just think about this for a second. Seriously, if you knew these were going to be your last words, your final message to the people you care about, what would you say? What's the one thing you'd absolutely have to get across? Because that's the level of importance, the kind of urgency we're dealing with here. And look, Peter himself lays it all out. He says he knows that shortly I must put off this my tabernacle. He's talking about his body, right? He sees it as a temporary dwelling, like a tent, and he's about to pack it up. So everything he's about to say is filtered through that lens of finality. He's not wasting a single word. He's trying to make every single one count. So with this final chance to speak, what's his number one priority? Well, it's not about his own legacy or reminiscing about the past. Nope. It's a blueprint for the future of his followers. He lays out this really positive, constructive path for them to follow, which you can almost picture as a ladder of virtues. And the reason why? The motivation he gives is, well, it's huge. This isn't just about being a good person. The goal is way more ambitious than that. He's saying if you do these things, you can become partakers of the divine nature. It's this idea that you can align your character so closely with God that you actually start to reflect it, and by doing that, you escape the moral decay all around you. That's a pretty powerful promise, right? And here are the steps. This is the ladder itself. It all kicks off with faith, but that's just the starting block. Peter is clear, you have to actively add to it. So to your faith, you add virtue. That's moral excellence. Then to that virtue, you add knowledge. So you understand why you're doing what you're doing. That knowledge needs to be balanced with temperance or self-control. And from that self-control, you develop patience, the ability to endure. Through that endurance, you find godliness, a deep respect for the divine. And it all leads up to this peak of brotherly kindness and charity, real active love for other people. See how each step builds on the one before it? It's a whole process. Okay, so after laying out this really positive roadmap for growth, the tone shifts dramatically. Peter pivots to a really stark warning because he sees this clear and present danger that could tear it all down. And the scary part? It's coming from inside the community. And what it all boils down to is the source of their teaching. Peter grounds everything he says in his own experience. He says, we were eyewitnesses. We saw it with our own eyes. He puts that right up against the false teachers who he says are just spinning cunningly devised fables. And their motivation? Pure greed. They use deceptive words, feigned words, to exploit people. He literally says they want to make merchandise of you, turning people's faith into a business. Peter's descriptions of these people are just so vivid. Think about that imagery. Wells without water. You're dying of thirst, you see a well, you run to it, and it's just dust. Total disappointment. Or clouds that are carried with a tempest. They look like they'll bring life-giving rain, but instead they just bring a destructive storm. That's his picture of these false teachers. All promise, no substance, and ultimately, they just cause chaos. And then he hits them with this shocking proverb. It's graphic, and it's meant to be. He's describing what happens to the people who get led astray by these false teachers. They get cleaned up, they escape all the bad stuff in the world, but then they get tangled up in it all over again. And he says their final state is even worse than where they started. It's a really brutal image of a complete and total spiritual collapse. And just to make it crystal clear that he's not just making empty threats, Peter brings out the history books. He's saying, hey, don't think for a second that there are no consequences. He points to the angels that sinned, to the whole ancient world during the flood, and to Sodom and Gomorrah. His argument is simple. God acted decisively against wrongdoing back then, and he'll absolutely do it again. Judgment is certain. So this heavy warning about judgment leads him right into the third and final major part of his message. This is where he looks beyond the immediate threats and gives a prophetic vision of what's ultimately coming for everyone. What's amazing is that he totally predicts the kind of skepticism we see today. He knows that as time goes on, people are going to get cynical. They'll start to mock the whole idea, saying, hey, where is this big return you're always talking about? Everything's just the same as it's always been. He's basically arming his followers for that exact argument. And this is his mind-bending answer. He tells them, look, our whole concept of time, our clocks, our calendars, it's completely irrelevant from a divine point of view. What feels like a really, really long time to us is like a blink of an eye to God. So the delay isn't a broken promise. It's just us looking at the clock when God is on a totally different timescale. So when does it happen? Well, that's the thing. He says it will be a complete surprise, as a thief in the night. And the event itself? He describes it in these huge cosmic terms. The heavens will dissolve, and the very elements of the universe will melt with intense heat. It's a picture of a total reset of the current world order. But, and this is a huge but, that's not the end of the story. The fire isn't the point. It's about what comes after the fire. Peter wraps up this whole prophecy with this incredible note of hope, the promise of new heavens and a new earth, a completely renewed reality, a place where righteousness is just the way things are. That's the finish line. All right, so we've climbed the ladder of virtue, we've heard the warning about deception, and we've seen the promise of a whole new world. So what are we supposed to do with all of that? Peter boils it all down to one final, simple, enduring command. This is it, right here. This is the big takeaway. After everything, all the warnings, all the prophecies, his very last instruction is just grow. Keep growing. Grow in grace and in knowledge. It's a call to never stop learning, never stop developing. And that, he says, is the best defense against being deceived and the best way to be ready for the future. And so that brings us to this final thought, a question that connects Peter's world right to ours. He begged his followers to be diligent, to make their calling and election sure. So for us, living right now, in an age that is just flooded with information and misinformation, with our own cunningly devised fables, what does that kind of diligence actually look like? What does it really mean to make your calling sure?